Last time on Sir Sic pointing and laughing at flatards.
We should know by now that mountains and plateaus are not rock formations, but the stumps of giant trees that were cut down. All of these trees extended from the tree of life at the center of our plain by a vast root system. They were silica-based, not carbon-based like today's trees. Life used to be silica-based, and now it's carbon-based. Carbon, as we know, has 6 protons, 6 electrons, and 6 neutrons, the mark of the beast.
Yep, so it's time to power on with our best friend in the world. Senor, trees are mountains made of magic silicon that gives you psychic powers. Or Mr. Tamoms for short.
It was one giant organism. What we think to be a cave system is actually an old root system.
You believe these mountain trees are made of silicon, right? Then we should be finding it lining absolutely every last one of these root systems. And certainly not loads of the limestone that's been eroded over a long time by CO2 acid rain. No, that requires far too much braining to understand. It must have been impossibly large trees cut down by Satan or Santa or whoever the hell your crazy ass thinks this week.
These trees were huge, and so were their roots. Side by side, a carbon-based root system is strikingly similar to the cave systems.
Here's a bunch of carbon-based root systems, as you so absurdly call it, all quite similar to one another. Here's a bunch of cave systems. Not even close, mate. The only thing these two things have in common is that they lead from above ground to underground.
The silica-based roots. Gems and crystals are most abundant in caves.
Do you even know how crystals are formed? They certainly weren't left there by trees, you lunatic. Gemstones form in a few different ways, some based on pressure, like diamonds, some based on soluble materials gathering in an ordered fashion. As usual, I'm oversimplifying, but I honestly don't think you're interested in learning the reality of these things, because it's just not magic enough. I'm sorry science is so difficult and boring. It's not like it ever did anything for us.
As we know, trees have a complex root system where they're able to communicate with one another.
Well, trees have complex root systems mostly for A, stability, B, surface area to collect water, and C, looking for nutrients. Also, not all trees grow together in a way that would allow for communication or like a giant organism, seeing as different species are competing for the same resources. Natural selection. It's a thing, look it up. And communicate is a vague as hell term. Any of the plants that do grow as one big entity aren't having long philosophical chats about the meaning of being a tree, or anything equally bonkers that I'm sure you would believe if you read it on notrealscience.net or crazyconspiracies.org.
Trees can transport carbon dioxide, water, and other hidden information we can't detect with our senses through their root systems.
Okay, so you appear to be talking about a study some scientists in Sweden did into CO2 when they discovered that trees were sharing the CO2 they introduced into the ecosystem. It was appearing in trees they hadn't given it to, because of a network of underground fungi that was transporting it around. This is pretty interesting, but not meaningful. You see, in order to give the CO2 to other trees, it had to take it from somewhere else. Essentially, the mushroom was the bourgeoisie, taking everything and then giving scraps back to the proletariat in order that they could continue working for them and they could carry on living underground, contributing bugger all. I don't know why, but I have the feeling that things can only be explained to this bloke in communist analogy.
If you've ever been in a room with tons of large quartz, amethyst, etc., you know that the energy is powerful.
Oh, do one, will you? I've been to Mystic Wistic Woo-Wah shops, and you know what I felt? Bored. After 2 seconds of going, oh, that crystal's a bit pretty, the rest of the time was waiting for the bird I was with at the time, and it's always a bird, to buy an overpriced hunk of rock because a book told her it would help her sleep. The only reason you felt a damn thing is because you wanted to, because your brain has itself convinced that there is something to it, so it must be there. Like with most things, if you're looking for a specific yet nebulous thing hard enough, you are going to find it, be it something religious or something like racism.
Crystals have been known to store information, and this is why they oftentimes require energetic cleansing.
You use the term information, but I don't think you know what that means. There are things that look like information, but they don't actually tell us anything fundamentally. Patterns in crystals aren't information in the same way that a line of code is, because all the pattern does is make that particular shape. It's not going to give you an address or gain me access to a wealth of porn. You could store information on a crystal, but that would require an intelligence to put it there. And 3,000 years of water dripping on a rock is not intelligence.
Imagine what kind of information and energy was circulating among this worldwide system of trees powered by the same material.
I've told you before, and I'll tell you again. Even if these silicon trees existed, which they didn't, they wouldn't be powered by silicon. Silicon isn't inherently the best material for data storage or transfer or whatever you want to apply to it. It's one of the many materials that can, and that includes carbon, in the right conditions. At high temperatures, diamond can function as a semiconductor. This would give it a massive advantage over silicon, as it could be used in a device that ran at frankly absurd clock speeds whilst maintaining integrity because of the high temperatures that would be produced. Do you even bother to look into any of your ideas to see if they hold an ounce of water? Or is everybody but you lying anyway, except for the people who told you what you want to believe?
And we're told that quartz is a rock-forming mineral. Now, this definitely makes sense.
You don't get to use that word. Sense is our word.
So think about it. How can a cave be constructed naturally out of the ground?
Limestone layers are eroded away by carbon dioxide acid rain. It's not that complicated.
We're given the bullshit answer that limestone gets dissolved over time and forms caves.
Just because you are too stupid to understand how a geological process works doesn't make it BS. It just makes you an idiot.
But again, these systems are all too similar to that of a root system.
No, they are not. You found one cave system that from the right angle looks a bit like a root system. Cherry picking and simply having no idea how things work is not evidence. It's idiocy.
Most rivers used to be filled with these roots as well. The rivers contained the above ground roots, while the caves in part contained the below ground roots.
Oh my God. This would usually be the bit in the video where I record myself laughing my head off live for a good minute. But it's just not funny anymore. You're becoming frustratingly dense. We have known how rivers form for a long, long time. But it's a slow process, much like your brain function. I won't insult my audience by going into it here, but you should have learnt this at school, at kindergarten, for Christ's sakes. Where were you educated? Some sort of underground bunker staffed by mole people?
Just some speculation.
Oh, well, that makes everything you say all right then, even though you present it as fact and the actual reality as BS.
Look at these photos of giant crystals inside of cave systems. This is insane.
You're insane. Stupid, ignorant, and you probably smell of poo.
I'm proposing all of these giant root systems used to contain as many of these crystals, but were stripped of them and are now lifeless.
Oh, so the ones that don't contain evidence for this having happened must have just had all the crystals taken away, because God forbid they just didn't contain any because they weren't formed by trees, you gibbering mental patient.
I mean, just look at some of the caves without crystals. To me, they appear stripped. They look dead.
Cave with no shiny looks sad.
An uprooted tree shows small roots in various sizes hanging from the bottom.
Well, duh. You are just astonished by the dumbest things. I can't imagine where you're going to go with this, but I'm going to have to leave it here. Opening my mind so much is starting to make my brain leak out. Catch you in the next one, folks. We will beat this. I promise. Asterisk.